Welcome to this on-stream guide feature. It's May, and May is synonymous with Mayfly, and we're going to fish two species of Mayfly, Ephemera danica, which is the largest UK Mayfly, state size, often a similar Mayfly as the green drake, and a small size 14 Mayfly, which is also emerging at this time of year. The flies are down below me here that we're going to fish on a variety of methods, and we will illustrate the setups for each of the techniques that how we're going to fish these flies. The dry flies are this one, which is the danica, and these are illustrated on the step-by-step on the On-Stream Guide website. And this Mayfly, which is a small pale coloured Mayfly, about a size 14, and that's copied by the On-Stream Guide pale watery or the soft hackle dry fly. This is actually the soft hackle dry fly. And the nymphs, this is the Mayfly nymph, the danica nymph, that's also illustrated on the On-Stream Guide website. And this is a new nymph that we've developed to imitate the size 14 Mayfly, and this will be illustrated in our e-zine. So if you want to see the tying instructions for this beautiful small Mayfly nymph, then subscribe to our e-zine free of charge at the On-Stream Guide website. Of course, a Mayfly is most vulnerable to trout when it's in the actual state of emergence, where it's bursting out of its nymphal shook and becoming an adult. And this fly here is the emerger stage. So we've got the larval or nymphal stage of the Mayflies, represented by these bead-headed flies, the dry flies represented by these CDC dry flies, and the emerger. So we will illustrate how these flies catch fish on this beautiful stream on this nice day in May. So let's get on with the fishing right now. So this is the Mayfly, Ephemera danica, and it spends 2 to 3 years in the river as a nymph, and it emerges and lives for just 2 or 3 days. It will undergo one more molt. This is the done stage of the fly. It's literally just burst out of its nymphal shook on the river surface, and it will undergo one more molt to become a sexually mature adult and complete its life cycle. And today is about imitating the life stages of the Mayfly in terms of our fly fishing and our approach. So to present the small nymph that we saw, which represents the small Mayfly, we're going to present that upstream on the duo. The duo dry fly is a fly called the Life Jacket LK Caddis Light, and that's available on the On-Stream Guide website. Now, to set up the duo, I've got approximately 5 feet of 4x tippet, and I'm going to fish the nymph at about a depth of 10 to 12, 18, approximately 18 inches. The stream's very shallow, so we don't need to fish any deeper than that. And to be honest, the duo is a technique where we present the nymph in relatively shallow riffles. So I've cut a tag of approximately 20 inches, and I'm going to tie this using a 3-turn water knot, often called a surgeon's knot. It's a very strong, reliable knot. So we simply make a loop and come through with both strands 3 times, like so. Moisten the knot, any knot before you tighten, and it's very important that the dry fly is tied on that downward tag, not the upward tag, and the nymph will be approximately 14 inches below that on this point here, and we tie the dry fly on the dropper. So I'll do that right now. So now my setup for the duo is complete. I've got an On-Stream Guide furled leader, which is approximately 5 feet long. I've got 5 feet of tippet on a dropper, of about 3 inches. I've got a buoyant dry fly which is supporting the weight of the Mayfly nymph, which is a 2mm tungsten beaded nymph, the nymph I showed you, to represent the larval stage of the nymph of the natural small mayfly. And now it's time to start fishing. So I'll be fishing upstream into this riffly water ahead of us and seeing, it's pre-hatch at the moment, and seeing if fish are looking and expecting the Mayfly nymph. So I'm presenting this Mayfly, small Mayfly nymph on the duo, which is the buoyant, which is the technique of fishing both the dry fly and the nymph simultaneously in this popply riffly water, not deep, upstream of me, into the edge of the faster current. And this is where trout will lie in wait, ready to ambush the nymphs. That's a better fish. Oh, that's a lovely big wild fish on the duo. Fished into that pocket. Straight downstream of me, as these big wild fish often go. Beautiful, stunning, stunning fish. So before even the Mayfly are emerging, we're using the duo to good effect. This is a nice sized trout pulled out of that pocket on the duo, and we'll get him in quickly. And get him straight back in the water. We'll see this beautiful wild trout, beautiful red spots on him. I'm always impressed by the vivid markings on these fish, and it's essential when we catch these beautiful fish that we handle them with extreme care, so always wet your hands and respect them. Beautiful fish. Now, of course, that hook, it took that Mayfly nymph that it was expecting in that little pocket. Stunning, stunning fish. And always make sure your fish swim off strongly. And there she goes for another day. So before even the Mayfly have started to appear, the small Mayfly, the fish are looking for the nymphs, and by fishing the duo we're able to present that small nymph, which represents the larval or nymph stage of the smaller Mayfly. So now I'm using the adult stage of the small Mayfly. You saw the nymph work. We've moved up to a pool and we've seen a fish taking small Mayfly. The fly is the soft hackle dry that I showed you, and the fish is taken in the area just above me. There's a small Mayfly there, so we might see it take in a second, and he's taking these size 14 Mayfly as they are hatching. So I'm going to target the dry fly over this fish and see if I can get him to take the adult small Mayfly. There he is. Now the back cast's very tricky because I've got a fallen tree behind us and we're in shallow water, so I've got to be a little bit cautious. That's just a tester to get my range. I need another metre or so of line out. There we go, that was the first cast. Nice pretty wild fish. So that was taking the adult stage of the Mayfly, and we presented that dry fly under that tree, and instantly we're rewarded with another pretty wild fish. Stunning marks. These fish are pristine. We can see the condition of the fish. Very nice fat little belly. Beautiful, stunning wild trout. Readily fooled by that soft hackle fly. He was sitting there quite happily taking those adult small mayfly. Face him upstream and watch him swim off strongly, and there he goes for another day. Beautiful, stunning fish. So we're going to change tactics again. We've seen a big fish rising to Danica, the full mayfly. Typically big fish rise in difficult positions, and this one's no exception. You can see a fallen tree in front of me, and the cast is very, very difficult. There's only a very narrow window to get the fly line through to land the fly. So I'm tying on the tippet. This is 4x when you fish a large fly, fish strong tippet. And I tie it on to the tippet ring. The Upstream guide furl leader has a tippet ring, and I use an improved Davy knot. So it goes round through again, and back through one more time. Moisten the knot, bit of saliva, and slide it down. And when you've tied that knot correctly, it will stand out at a 90-degree angle. There's a small fish rising in front of us. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the fish rising on the far side. We've seen him take 2 Danica, and he seems to be a good sized fish rising typically in a difficult position. There's branches overhead and branches to my right hand side, so the cast is going to be quite tricky, and I'm going to be using the large mayfly that we explained earlier. So now I'm going to try and get a cover on this large fish with this mayfly. It's going to be quite tricky, but we'll see what we can do. There we go, that was a small one. Took that mayfly as soon as it landed, but it shows we can get across to the big fish. We should take it fairly rapidly. Little wild trout, jump in with vigour on that mayfly pattern. Off he goes. Now I hope that hasn't spooked the larger fish that we were targeting. He came out pretty quickly, so hopefully the larger fish should still be there. That's a big, big wild fish on that mayfly. So we've caught on the nymph. We've caught on the small mayfly, we've caught on the small mayfly nymph, and now we're fishing the natural mayfly. That's a stunning fish from a small stream. Beautiful fish. And he's taken the fly very aggressively. He's actually swallowed it. We're taking it deeper than I'd like, so we'll have to use the forceps on him, handle him very carefully. There we go. Stunning conditioned wild fish. Beautiful, beautiful. So that's the adult mayfly pattern working. So we've seen several patterns work today. The small mayfly nymph, which we fished on the duo, and that's barbless hook straight out, of course. Take great care of these fish, always have the right tools. Face them upstream when you release them, and make sure they swim off strongly. Stunning fish. And there he goes for another day. So today we've seen small mayfly emerge, and we've targeted those on the small mayfly pattern. We've caught fish before we saw the hatch using the duo, presenting the small mayfly, that quill body nymph, into the pockets. And now in the early afternoon there's a few mayfly coming off and a few fish rising to them, and we're catching these stunning wild brown trout on this adult mayfly pattern. Let's go and find some new water and fish the mayfly nymph. Oh, that was a nice fish. Another one. So now I'm fishing the mayfly nymph, and I'm using an old technique called upstream nymphing. I'm just staying in contact with the nymph, not trying to drag it too much. Mayflies are weak swimmers, but this is often a very effective method of catching. And of course, there I saw a slight twitch, which might have been a fish. It was actually a rock, and react very quickly. So I'm fishing this mayfly nymph. It's one on a small bead upstream. And if there's any movement on the fly like that, it's important to react. Make sure there's no weed on the fly. I'm just going to lay the fur leader on the water, just use it as an indicator. There we go, nice fish on that mayfly nymph. So we've seen the mayfly nymph now working, seen the adult mayfly work, and the two forms that's a stunning trout, stunning wild fish. A gorgeous trout. Gorgeous, gorgeous trout. That was readily fooled by the mayfly nymph. Pretty, pretty fish. Nice fat belly, well conditioned, very rarely caught. Face him upstream, look at those vivid red spots. Stunning fish. And back he goes. And so that's the mayfly nymph that I demonstrated to you earlier. So we've now seen the mayfly nymph work, the small mayfly nymph work, and the adult forms of the mayfly work on this small stream. We're going to carry on moving up, look for fish. What I was doing there was a technique called upstream nymphing. I had the third leader, which has been greased with red mucilin, laying on the surface, and it just moved a fraction of an inch, and I reacted when that fish took that mayfly nymph. Let's see if there's any more fish further upstream. There we go, another one on that nymph, coming thick and fast. Smaller fish this time, but equally welcome. So the mayfly nymph there, very, very effective, as you've seen. And it's quite apparent that the Danica nymph is an effective fly, though it is very rarely used. People prefer to use the dry fly for perhaps obvious reason, but the nymph can be equally effective. And this technique is about as simple as a technique we can use upstream nymphing. I've just got a greased on-stream guide third leader, 4.5 feet of tippet, and I'm just laying the third leader on the surface of the water, and when it twitches, that indicates that a fish has taken that mayfly nymph. Let's go find some bigger fish. That's another fish on the mayfly nymph. Obviously there are a lot of fish in this deep run, and the mayfly nymph is very effective at extracting them. This is a very big fish. Just take my time with this one. It's pulling hard. It's a good fish. The 389 is being well tested with this fish. It's a very good quality fish, this one. Very fit fish, very strong. That's a very large fish on that mayfly nymph, and that was a very strong fish. Just the mayfly nymph's just in its top. And so we see the effectiveness of that mayfly nymph. Most people, as I say, concentrate on fishing the dry fly when they fish the mayfly hatch, when in actual fact the nymph can be equally effective, if not more so. That's a very, very large trout. Maybe 1.5 pounds in weight. Big fish. Let's get him back. Oh, and there it goes. Well, that's that fish on that emerger. Oh, nice wild fish there. So we've caught fish on all stages of the mayfly, and that one took the emerger. So the emerger works in this poppy water. Oops, and there he goes. Short distance release. So the emerger works in the broken poppy water and fished into poppy water where fish are looking for emerging mayfly. The emerger is effective. So we've caught on the emergers and the nymphs and the adult duns. Today has been about fishing the mayfly, and as you can see, these are mayfly spinners dancing around me right now. This is the actual adult stage of the mayfly, the final stage, and we didn't imitate this final stage. This is called the spinner. But the stages of the mayfly we did imitate were the larval or nymphal stage, and we did that with those beaded nymphs. And we fished the beaded nymphs in two ways. We fished them as a duo setup, and I explained that duo setup earlier, and we fished it as an upstream nymphing method. As an upstream nymphing method, it was rather like the dry fly. We have a 5-foot on-stream guide fur leader which is treated with red muslin, approximately 5 feet of tippet, and the nymph was just tied directly to the end. We stayed in contact with the nymph and watched for any twitches in the fur leader when fishing it upstream. That's the upstream nymphing method. We also fished it upstream under an indicator, which is basically the same method with a stick-on indicator approximately 2 feet up from the nymph, and fished that into the riffles and caught fish on all those techniques. It's been a fabulous day. The mayfly spinners are now dancing around me. That will be their final act. They will mate on the wing, and the female will lay her eggs, and that will complete the life cycle. The eggs will hatch and turn again into the larval forms of the mayfly, which we will later fish. When we fly fish, we will imitate those larval stages again with the nymphs, as you've seen us do today. It's been a wonderful day fishing the river in May. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope to see you on the river soon.